Yo and hello, welcome back to the League of Fantasy Legends podcast. I am your host, Pistons Wish, Chris Benedict. I'm joined once again by Ferris Biscuit. Biscuit, how are you?
I am doing so well. I'm so happy that we are finally back after a little bit of hiatus there. Obviously off-season is in full swing and there's so much to talk about. I just really can't wait to get into all of it.
That's right. I hope you finally got the problems with the microphone figured out. It sounds great on my end. So we are rolling. It's been a while. World Finals, really the last big thing that we've talked about. But we are rolling. We've got rosters locked for most teams. Still going to be a couple last minute decisions. Speaking of which, we just came off of a huge one that was announced last night. We were supposed to record last night, so I'm glad we pushed it back so we know who the jungler for Liquid is, but we'll get there. I just want to shout out once again our Twitter. It's at LFL Pod. Follow us there. You'll get all the updates, our thoughts on fantasy goings-ons, and our thoughts on rankings and stuff. We are still waiting to hear on official times for the games this year. We heard the rumors during Worlds where it's Wednesday, Thursday instead of the weekends. And it's going to be a huge impact on, when you have to set your lineups and stuff. And so I'm hoping they announce that soon. You haven't heard anything on your end, have you, Biscuit?
Nothing different since Worlds. I know I saw a couple of things going online, mostly Twitter, just saying, where's the information, right? Are we going to get something soon? People are trying to make plans, whether that be for spring finals or just to go see the matches in general. People have no idea, right? So hopefully we get something sooner than later.
Yeah, no kidding. We don't even really have a start date. Are they doing a lock-in tournament again? I haven't even heard on that.
I would assume so, but I'm not sure when exactly that would be. Obviously it's prior to spring split, right? So if spring split, if we're shooting for, like January, I believe, probably towards the end of January to start the split, you would think the lock-in would be like early January. So I don't know. Hopefully we get something, like I said, sooner than later.
Yeah, no kidding. Once we hear on that, obviously we'll shoot that out everywhere. Again, join our Discord. You can find that on our Twitter account in the description or in the description of this podcast. We're always talking about stuff. Join the conversation there. Finally, I want to shout out the Ego app, our first and only sponsor. Thank you, Ego app. They're going to be hosting competitions this year. It's only going to be for LEC so far. Still to be determined if they'll be doing LCS competitions, but we'll have the link for that also in the description of this episode. I will likely be helping out with a podcast on that too. And so really getting into fantasy, LCS, and LEC. Super excited about that. Want to get right into it. The rosters have been revealed for pretty much all 10 teams. Not really much still up in the air. And so we're just going to go team by team and announce the roster and what we think about it. You good with that?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, starting off with the big one, the one that I assume, a team that last year was not the fan favorite, even though they were good. This year, picking up a couple fan favorites, 100 Thieves from the top down. Tenacity, Closer is back. Then you bring in the two greatest players in North American history, Bjergsen and Doublelift. Support is Busio coming out of 100 Thieves Academy along with Tenacity. What do you make of this one? This sounds like a super team. What do you think?
Yeah, talk about a real game changer, especially to start things off for our conversation here. It's definitely something to see this many new faces on a team that was just so rock solid for so long. The only thing I can really make of it in a nutshell is, they had the team that they did have for, again, so long after they picked up, FBI, obviously Closer's still there, and Huhi. They brought all those guys over from Golden Guardians originally. And, they were getting the job done, at least getting to the finish line, but unfortunately they just couldn't get over the finish line more than they wanted to, right? So they decided to shake things up pretty significantly here. There's so much to discuss about this team, so we want to obviously try to work through it as we go through all the teams here, but it's awesome to see like some new faces, like Tenacity finally getting a chance. Busio, I believe, was the MVP for the Academy League last split. And obviously, like you mentioned already, they got Bjergsen and Doublelift coming, two of the greatest players, if not the greatest players to ever play in North American history. So what exactly do you think about this roster just on paper?
Tell you what, I think the whole team comes down to one thing, and that is, does Doublelift still have it? I mean, he's the greatest player in North American history as voted, by his peers. Or was he second? Oh, gosh, I think they had him second, didn't they, behind Bjergsen?
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, he hasn't played competitively in 2 years. Obviously, he's been streaming, Champions Queue, YouTube, all that stuff. But if he still has it, I think this team has a chance to be chance to win the league, honestly. Tenacity, from what we've heard in an academy, has been really good. Busio as well. Bjergsen, even if he's not flashy, he's never going to lose the game for you. He's so solid. And then Closer, Closer's been there forever. And I think he's really solid too. So I think it comes down to, does Doublelift still have it? Personally, I think he probably does.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know me personally, I obviously know of Doublelift. I know he's obviously one of the greatest players ever. I'm not sure if I was really following it too strongly when he was in the league, obviously doing his thing. So, do you have any more background that you might be able to give the fans out there as far as what we might be able to see from Doublelift? I know there's also rumblings I heard that, because of the talent or lack thereof at the ADC position, that Doublelift might have an easier time adjusting to the current, to the league as it is now. Do you have any more insight you might be able to give us just on Doublelift and what you know of him?
Well, yeah, he's been around for so long. When I first started watching League, he was on CLG at that rush hour bot lane, him and Afromu back in the day. Of course, it used to be a meme that he had his, Doublelift's trophy case had no trophies in it. Ever since then, he won, I don't even know how many, 4 or 6 maybe consecutive splits between his time at TSM and his time at Team Liquid. He's just so good. I think of some of the plays. He's got probably the most infamous play on that, the Lucian play where he dashes into the Victor at Worlds and pretty much single-handedly gets them eliminated from that group. So that's a heartbreaking one, but I also think of the Lucian play against, I believe it was against C9 in the mid lane against the Talia, where he kind of cleans up a fight by himself. So he's definitely got that pop-off potential. He's been so good for so long. So I don't think he's washed. We'll see. Obviously, if you guys watched some of his co-streams he did during LCS, he had a lot of maybe negative things to say about the other ADCs in the league. So we'll see if he can back that talk up. I don't know. I think he's going to be good. I think 100 Thieves has a really good chance this year. I like what they've done. A big change from the team last year. And I like that team too, but we'll see where it goes. Next team here, going to talk about CLG. CLG running it back. There was a lot of stuff on social media the last day or two. It seemed like they were trolling the fans, but it will be Dokla, Contracts, Palafox, Luger, and Poom once again from the CLG squad that honestly was a game 5 away from beating C9 and getting real close to getting to Worlds. I think this is a team with a lot of potential. I loved them last year. What do you think about CLG running it back?
Yeah, so obviously the play here is to obviously run it back, right? So with the players that they had, they wanted to be able to try to build on what they had last year. Overall, good year, I feel like, for the entirety of the year, not just the one split. So definitely, I feel like it's a good idea for them to run it back. I always preach cohesion amongst the team is arguably the most important thing to have when it comes to any team in this league or any league for that matter. So I think this could be a good idea. Hopefully they still have the desire to, play with one another and continue to grow. So we'll just have to see how that turns out for them. I think they should be one of the better teams in the league, but I personally think the league has gotten a lot better overall this offseason. So we'll see what they bring to the table this upcoming split.
Yeah, I'm really happy they ran it back. I was all over social media when they lost, telling them to run it back. They're one of the few teams that did. Actually, they're the only team to run back the exact same roster. I met Dokla at Worlds. He was super cool, really good dude. I'm rooting for this team. We're going to run through power rankings once we're done introducing all the rosters. I think you'll find them higher on mine than most. Next one up, Cloud9. Cloud9 pretty close to running it back. It'll be Fudge, Blabber, Diplex is the only change, and then Berserker and Sven in the bot lane. Diplex coming from Vitality B in the LFL. Sven obviously coming back. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought he might be trying to role swap back to the AD carry spot. Cloud9, historically always good. No more Jensen on this squad. What do you think about Cloud9?
Well, we'll get to Jensen in just a little bit here as my heart begins to flutter, but I think this squad I still think it looks really good. Like you mentioned, they're bringing 4 of the 5 players back and they're bringing in new faces. And is it pronounced Diplex or Diplex? Diplex, I believe.
I don't know, to be honest.
Regardless, they did bring in Diplex. I'll go with that. And then they also brought in another mid by the name of, I'm probably going to butcher this name too. I think it's Imenez. I believe he is from one of either the LCK or LPL. And I heard things that he might actually end up being the actual starter for them once he gets acquainted with the team and how they operate. Okay. So we'll see how things, we'll see how things go there. It just looks like they kind of reloaded or just filled in holes where they needed to, right? As far as replacing Jensen. So obviously Jensen's a great talent. I don't know much about the players they brought in to fill the mid position, but it does seem like on paper that they should be able to, at least come close to what Jensen, if not maybe outdo him perhaps. But I guess obviously that comes with time and getting to know your teammates. So I think it's going to be a really strong team going into next split. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring.
Yeah, I actually really like what they did too. I think that Jensen honestly wasn't great last year. He was okay. Like, he was definitely serviceable, and against, not the best competition, he definitely showed off. He was a good fantasy player because of that. But I think against the top competition, he really wasn't that good. I thought he had a pretty bad Worlds, despite solo killing Faker. Yeah, I think this squad will be good. Like you said, I don't know much about the mid laners they brought in, but the other four running it back, Fudge, I'm not a huge fan personally, but I know that he's good. Blabber's maybe my favorite player in LCS history. And then Berserker, we know what he can do. Sven with another year to really get comfortable in the support position. I think this team's got a shot too. They'll definitely be in the running for winning, like C9 is every single year. Dignitas is next on our list. Dignitas, making some noise. Bringing in some high name players that people really didn't expect. It's Armut, Santorin, Jensen, Spawn, and Ignar. You are the Dignitas fan among us. What do you think about what they've put together?
So when it comes to Dignitas, the only thing I can say right off the bat is just forget everything you know about League of Legends and Dignitas when it comes to this team, because I don't understand if anybody's been following anything going on online as far as, league related. They went from, I believe, selling their spot potentially in the league to spending what I assume is more than they have ever spent, at least coming, once they got back into the league. I don't know what is happening here, but I am delighted to see it. Obviously,
there were a lot of rumors of them selling the squad outright.
Yeah. And like I said, you go from that to basically the other side of the spectrum, right? And what I assume is a pretty hefty salary amongst all the players combined, right? So I don't know what is going on over there, but hey, I'm happy at the end of the day. The players they brought in are absolute upgrades minus Ignar, but hey, how much worse can it get? And obviously they run it back with Spawn. So we'll see what this team brings. I think this is probably the best Dignitas team, at least since they come back into the league, maybe ever.
Yeah, you said it, Spawn. I think they're putting a lot of eggs in that basket, because I think of Santorin, I think of Jensen, both as real solid, but not really ones that demand all the resources like that carry potential. Arma, obviously, he's got the Gnar meme where he only plays Gnar. And then Ignar, who last split, we called him the LVP, the least valuable player. He's the lowest scoring player since we've been recording stats for fantasy. Hopefully, that was just a product of the team around him for your and Dignitas fans' sake. I already mentioned not super high in Jensen, but this is a team. To me, I mean, it all depends on how they gel, right? We've seen all of these players outside of Spawn be successful in other spots, and so we'll see what they can do in this squad. Next, we've got Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses mostly running it back. Someday inspired Jojo Pion, FBI the only change, and then Vulcan. FBI at 80 carry. I mean, he's potentially not Danny. Danny was awesome, but I don't know that you could replace him with a better North American player.
Yeah, this is another really interesting roster, I think, just top to bottom. And I think it's really strong. I'll go as far as to say to make the case that it's even better than what Dignitas was definitely running, or excuse me, not Dignitas, Evil Geniuses was running at the end of last split with, the replacement of Danny with Kaori. Mm-hmm. And I know obviously they got rid of Impact as well for Someday. So I think this is one of the more solid rosters in the entire league, just because you do have Vulcan, Inspired, and JoJo, who obviously have played with one another. They're going to run back and just get more experience and build on that cohesion that they had last split. And then you're bringing in veterans that, luckily for them, know each other as well, right? In FBI and Someday. So I just think this team will start off right from the get-go being one of the better teams. And I think they're going to have, not only the spring split, but definitely the summer split when it matters most to really find their groove as a team. And I think they'll fit together a lot quicker than most teams will from the start.
Yeah, of course. My apologies. I forgot Someday was there too. I love what they've done. I think if you're going to lose Impact, I think the only player of North American talent that you could replace him with and not have a huge downgrade is Someday.
Agreed.
I mean, the conversation all last year was who's better, Someday or Impact, and it was really just those two. once Summit was gone at least. And then FBI, I mean, he's been so good for so long. He's so solid. And with Inspired and Jojopi on that mid jungle that, has been really phenomenal. You need someone who's, just solid in the bot lane. I think FBI is that. You put him with Vulcan. I really like this team. I think they're the favorite.
Yeah, I definitely think they're one of, like I said, probably one of the top 3 teams in my opinion, on paper at least.
Yep, of course we'll have to see how it works out. Next team I want to talk about FlyQuest. FlyQuest totally wiping the slate clean and starting new. We've got Impact in the top lane, Spica in the jungle, Vikla, Prince, and Ayla rounding out that roster. All new players for this year. I really like last year's FlyQuest squad. I like FlyQuest in general, just what they stand for and their mission and their merch and stuff. What do you think of this squad, though?
Yeah, talk about turning things on its head completely, right? The brand new team, not bringing back any players. I think some of their academy is still the same. I think they brought back Philip he's not playing in the academy, but that's, besides the point. As far as the starting 5 here in LCS, it's just, there's a lot of big names as far as like Impact and, Spica go. I think that's definitely an upgrade over Jose Diedo and Philip from last split. And then they bring in Ayla, who in my opinion was not only the best support in academy last split, but I think he was the actual best player in the entire academy. So I'm glad he's getting a chance finally. I think he'll mesh well with Prince, but I don't know too much about Prince and Vikla. I know those are the imports that they brought over. What I was able to find on them from like a paper standpoint, just statistically speaking, they do look like really solid players and they should fit. But as we know, with really any imports, it does take them time to get accustomed to the league and just being in a new setting, obviously. So hopefully that pans out for FlyQuest, and they're betting on things working out for this team.
Yeah, for sure. Ayla, of course, subbed in for Core JJ when they were waiting on him getting his green card, and honestly showed out really, really well. The big question, I mean, obviously there's a lot of questions of this squad. I think Impact is really the only sure thing. But Spica on TSM last year, honestly, the team was terrible. It kind of seemed like he was an Elo hell if you took like the community sentiment. That's the way I had it perceived, but we'll see on this new squad. I think there's a lot of pressure on him because he was bad last year. If he's bad again this year, that may just about spell it for him. Vikla and Prince, again, I don't watch a lot of LCK, but I know KT Rolster every single year is up there. I think it was a bit of an upset that they didn't make Worlds. DRX beat them late in that tournament. Of course, DRX going on to win the whole thing. FlyQuest, they're the biggest wild card to me. I think they could win it. I think they could finish bottom 3. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but I am super excited, and I will be rooting for them.
Yeah, that is a spicy take. Did you have something spicy for lunch, perhaps? Because bottom 3, whoa, okay.
Listen, I'm not predicting it. I'm not, but I do think it's within the realm of possibility. This team, I mean, they've never played together. I imagine we're going to have some language barriers even with LCK. I think Spica speaks Korean. I'm not sure about Impact or Ayla, but yeah, I don't know. I think that roster is going to be a huge coin flip.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Golden Guardians is next. Golden Guardians running it back a little bit. We got Licorice and River and Stixay back in top jungle and AD. We have Gory coming in the mid lane, coming from PSG Talon. And then Huhi moving over from 100 Thieves. 2 Golden Guardians in the support role. It's your favorite player, River, here on Golden Guardians. What do you make of it?
I mean, that one word alone just encompasses everything that this team apparently stands for. But no, in all honesty, I think they did get better overall on paper. I think I mentioned it during the playoffs, right? Stixay was, in my opinion, he carried that team in the short playoff run that they had, and he actually looked pretty solid, I thought. So hopefully for him, he can, continue to grow and build on that momentum from playoffs. You bring back, I should say, guys like Licorice and River. It is what it is, right? I don't think they're the best of players. I think they are bottom 3 in each of their positions. So we'll see if they're able to improve now that, again, they brought back, most of their team, right? So they're going to have more time to get to know each other better, know each other's moves and plays and whatnot. So maybe that works out. Huhi, I think, is definitely an upgrade over Olay. So I'm glad they were able to get him. And then Gory, again, I don't know much about, but on paper, he looks pretty good. So it's really going to come down to whether or not he can, adapt like the rest of the imports. But I think this team is better overall on paper than it was last split. I don't think it's as good as the majority of teams in the league, but you never know how that might work out with everybody, meshing together in the end. So maybe it works out for them and they surprise some people.
Yeah. Licorice, he's been just okay. He was really good at the start of his career with C9, but ever since he's been, kind of the definition of average. River, I mean, we know about River. The last couple splits has been not great. Stixay, again, he's been around forever. He's been just okay. And then he's been good. Obviously, 100 Thieves has been good, but we'll see how they mesh moving on to Immortals. Immortals coming off a pretty tough year last year. Running back the top side of the map, Revenge and Kenvi. And then Ablaze Olive coming over from Golden Guardians. Finishing off with Tactical and Fleshy. Fleshy coming over from the Turkish League. Well, what do you think about Immortals?
I think if you're an Immortals fan, you just got to ask yourself every single time you see them play, it can't get any worse, right? Like, that's got to be like the question. They can't get any worse than last year, specifically last split. So, just taking a look at this team on paper, Fleshy seems like an incredible pickup for them. I think you said come over from the Turkish League. He was apparently on a team that was 17-1. So obviously really good there. It looks like he had about 192 assists, which is just absolutely ridiculous compared to some of the players that were in the LCS last split. So he looks like a really good pickup. I mean, I think I might be better than Ignar at this point, but who knows?
God.
So I think that
not very nice.
yeah, I think that's definitely a good pickup for them. I think that's the biggest move they made this offseason. But as far as the rest of the roster goes, you bring back Revenge and Kenvi again in the top and jungle. I don't know how much more rope they have per se to prove themselves. I can't imagine it's very, very much. So we'll see what they bring. And then you have Ablaze Olive, which I know I made a comment in the Discord. I'm not really sure why you would bring him in. If you follow the stats at all, Power of Evil, who they had last split, was statistically the worst mid laner in the league. And then they go and pick up Ablaze Olive, who now the Power of Evil is out of the league. Ablaze Olive is now statistically the worst mid in the league. So I'm not sure what they're doing there. And as far as Tactical comes over, I always thought Instinct was better than Tactical. I'm not sure. I don't think Instinct was available, but if he was, I wish they would have rather gotten him instead. But I think the most interesting part and the players to watch for this starting lineup again are going to be Ablaze Olive and Tactical, because they did go out and make some moves in their academy team. They picked up a couple players by the name of Balulu, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced ADD or just Ad. Those are both imports that they brought over. And again, statistically on paper, they blow both these players out of the water. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them getting some playing time, whether it be this split or, the summer split. And I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly happens with this roster, because I feel like we're going to see a lot more turnover and some different names in and out throughout the split.
You said they picked up a player named ADD?
I believe that's how you pronounce it.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I mean, BDD, obviously a mid laner in Korea for a lot of years. I recognize that from Worlds past. I kind of assume ADD is just a play off of that. Immortals, yeah, Ablaze Olive and Tactical both, I think, are probably on their last leg here in the league. Like, they need to show out this split, or they may find their careers to be cut short. Revenge, probably about in the same boat. Kenvi's still really young. Last year, his rookie season didn't go well, but I think he got a lot better as the split went on. So we'll see what Immortals can do. I certainly think they'll be bottom half of the league, but it'll be interesting to see. Move on to Team Liquid. Liquid had the big announcement yesterday. Glad we did not record this episode beforehand. Piosik coming over from DRX, literal reigning world champion. He'll be the jungler here for Team Liquid. He'll be joined by Summit coming back to North America after his summer split in China, coming off the spring split MVP with Cloud9. And then Hyeri, Yeon, and CoreJJ. CoreJJ, the only returning player, obviously a former league MVP. This Liquid team, I think they are loaded with potential, kind of the Korean team here in North America. What do you make about Team Liquid?
Real quick, I just wanted to rephrase from what I said about Immortals. I do apologize, but I meant Revenge instead of Tactical, as far as a potential replacement that they do have in ADD for Revenge in the top there. So I do apologize for misspeaking. But as far as this Liquid team goes, I think it's one of the more interesting teams that we have, maybe aside from like FlyQuest, that we're seeing for this upcoming split. I'm super happy to see players like Harry and Jan get their opportunity. Coming from the academy, they were both the best in their position from the academy last split. So it's going to be really interesting to see, how they transition to the LCS. I think Jan will be in a great spot with, the veteran and CoreJJ helping him out for sure. Summit, he's always been, a decent to good player, right? Anywhere he goes. So he's coming back. We'll see how he's able to readjust coming into the league. And then, like you mentioned, the huge pickup for them just announced, I believe, late last night, if not early this morning.
Yeah, it was literally last night.
Yeah, and Piosik, is that how you pronounce it? Piosik, right?
I think it's Piosik.
Oh,
yeah,
Piosik, excuse me. Yeah, so Piosik, massive pickup if this is definitely confirmed for sure. And like you mentioned, I think you hinted on it. They, as far as I understand, they were going for the all-Korean speaking team. I think that's the way they decided they wanted to go. So maybe that works out for them. There's obviously not going to be that language barrier. So maybe, again, that does work out. This definitely one of the more interesting rosters. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think this is another one with potential. I think they could finish really high. I mean, you obviously have the literal world champion. That being said, he really wasn't that great through the actual season, right? I wonder how much of it may have just been that the meta was good. They obviously had a reverse sweep. They could have gone out in the first round of the knockout stage at Worlds, and we wouldn't have really heard from him. But I think bringing Summit in is huge. I mean, he skill gapped the rest of the league in the spring so much. I wonder, if he's able to just work on map awareness and communication. I think that was a big part of what went wrong with Cloud9. They just kind of picked on him. But he literally won the spring split MVP. So I think he's been, I think that's a huge pickup. I think he'll be someone to target. I think they'll be playing through him more so than the rookies, in the mid lane and in the bot lane. And then I honestly think this is going to be a team that not a lot of people are going to root for, right? A team that speaks Korean, not a lot of players that people really know and have, a history with, Core JJ really being the only one. So we'll see. I think they could finish really highly. Last team here to go over, TSM. They come out with Solo coming back in the top lane, finally getting his starting role. You got Bougie, I believe, or Boogie. Not really sure how to say it. Coming from Estral Esports, Latin America. We got Maple, Neo, and Chime coming back. Of course, Maple and Chime were there in the summer split. What do you make of this one? I know when they announced it, the TSM fans were not so pleased.
Right. And I don't know how much of the outside, or I should say beyond the League of Legends team itself plays into their decisions here. Obviously, there's still a lot of turmoil going on with TSM. If you follow like FTX, I believe it is.
Yeah,
they
FTX,
were a huge sponsor of theirs, and I don't believe I think it's on hiatus or hold or whatever you want to call it at this point. But I'm sure that, played a little bit of a role in who they were able to pick up, just salary and budget wise. So I don't think this team is very good on paper. Again, I think Chime is okay. Solo, I think, is okay at best. Neo, just being a Dick fan, he was obviously replaced by Spawn. I'm surprised to see him back in the league this quickly. I don't think Maple has really lived up to the expectation since he's come over. And then again, I don't know enough about, I think you pronounce it Boogie. Maybe it's Bug Eye. That would be cool, I think. But,
oh, Bug Eye.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Are you an Ants guy, or are you what was that other movie? Oh my gosh, I'm showing my age here. I should know this.
A Bug's Life?
There you go.
A Bug's Life.
Is it Ants or a Bug's Life?
Definitely a Bug's Life.
Yeah, so am I, but I couldn't even think of the name. So some fan I am. But regardless, we'll see what happens here. I know they have mostly veterans, if the academy team is to be believed. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of turnover and change really with this roster, perhaps, at least the starting five, I should say. So we'll see what happens. I don't think this roster is one of the better ones in the league. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if you're a TSM fan, you're pretty whelmed about this roster. Solo, I'm glad he's getting his spot, but coming from Latin America, not the strongest league for Bougie is how I'm going to pronounce it. Maple was just okay. Neo was just okay. I don't have a lot of high hopes. I think the absolute ceiling for this team is probably 7th or 6th in the league. And you mentioned it. I want to speak to it a little bit. The academy roster for TSM is hilarious. It's got Sven Skaren, who's a literal MVP from years past, and Haunter, I believe, who was on the TSM super teams of like 2016. It's got to be the oldest academy roster of all time.
Hey, don't forget about Wild Turtle.
Wild Turtle! I knew I was missing one. Yeah, that's crazy.
It is something.
So we've gone through all of the rosters. I want to do just a real quick, like a way too early power rankings, who just on the first glance of rosters, obviously there's a lot of news that's still going to come out, a lot of things about how teams are going. And, some of these teams probably haven't even gotten together to scrim together at all. But I want to go through some power rankings. I want to know, who do you have number one for the spring split?
Okay, do we want to go number 1 to 10, or do we want to surprise people and go 10 to 1?
Okay, we can go 10 to 1. We can go 10 to 1. Who do you have at 10?
So at number 10, I have Immortals, just because I don't think this team is much better, if at all, than last split. I think Fleshy's a really good pickup. I'm really excited to see what he can do, but outside of that, I think they're in the same boat as they were last split, and we all know how that went.
Yeah, that's fair. I've got 10 Golden Guardians, kind of similar things. I just don't love Licorice and River. I don't think they're that good. They don't move the needle for me. And then Stixay, also, I think he's serviceable, but then I don't know enough about the mid laner. I just don't have high hopes for Golden Guardians. I've got them at 10. 9 for me is TSM. I really kind of struggled. I think Solo, Maple, Neo. I think these are all guys that have been at best okay in their previous splits. And once they come together and they're better than the sum of their parts, I don't have super high hopes for TSM.
Yeah, same here. I also had TSM at 9. Basically the same exact reasons that you mentioned. I think the only bright spot, and if that's what you want to call it at this point, is I'm going to go with Bug Eye. I love Bug Eye as the name. So I think Bug Eye is the only real potential spotlight on the team. So take that for what it's worth. But I don't see this again being one of the better teams in the league.
Yeah, apologies to Boogie if you're listening, or we'll get this right as soon as we hear it officially.
Exactly. Apologize in advance.
That's right. Number 8, I have Immortals. I think that they'll be better than the other 2 bottom teams. But again, I think this is kind of where the clear line is drawn between teams with hope to win the split and teams with no hope to win the split. I like Tactical. I think Ablaze Olive is okay. I think I just think they'll finish 8th.
Well, I'm going to go Golden Guardians at 8, basically for all of the reasons that you already mentioned. I think of the 3 teams that we have already mentioned, I think they're the only team that has, I don't want to say significantly increased or bettered their roster, but I think they've made enough moves to separate themselves from the 2 teams that I had in TSM and Immortals in 9th and 10th. I don't think they have any chance of winning the split by any means, but I think they will be improved from last split.
So would you agree with me that this is kind of where the line is drawn, kind of a bottom 3, top 7?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. From this point on, I'm so curious to hear who you're going to have ranked where, because I just think there's a lot of parity this year. Like, I think any of these 7 teams, if things go right, could win the split. At 7, I have Dignitas. I'm sure you do not agree with me. I think they'll be better than the others, but I don't have huge hopes for Jensen. Honestly, I think he's kind of washed, more so than Bjergsen, which may be different than, the community's sentiment. And then, we've talked about Ignar. I'm surprised he found another spot after the tough split he had last year.
Yeah, so actually at 7, I do have Dignitas as well.
Wow.
Here come all the
Some
haters.
fan you are.
Yeah, exactly. But I have them here at 7 just because I don't think they're as good as some of the teams we'll talk about as we go along here. And I kind of think they're in their own tier, or their tier of their own, I should say. With the players they brought in, I think this is clearly the best Dignitas team to ever be assembled. And I just don't know exactly where they'll lie. I think they'll start out of the gate hotter than some of the teams that we'll talk about, especially my 5th and 6th place team here, just because I feel like they have a better chance of getting to know each other quicker, if that makes sense. And obviously they're all accustomed to, besides Armut, to the LCS and how that works out. So I don't know if I had to guess, again, this is just very, very early pre-rankings for, the coming split. I think they have a chance to maybe be like 4 at the absolute highest. I don't see them cracking the top 3, but at the end of the day, I think right now on paper, this is the 7th best team in the league.
Does it say anything that you're calling this the best Dignitas roster of all time and then placing them 7th?
No, I'm completely aware of that. Who knows? Maybe they'll surprise everybody, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Number 6. Who you got at number 6?
Oh man, just taking a look at your list and my list, it's so interesting. So right now at 6, I actually have FlyQuest, and I have my 5th and 6th place team in their own tier. So I think FlyQuest, I think the upside for FlyQuest is insane, right? Like, I think I've seen some have them as high as 1 as far as power rankings go online. So if things work out for them, I think that's a very realistic possibility. I just think FlyQuest right now, as it stands, they are going to need probably more time than most teams to get acquainted with one another. They're going to take a lot of that spring split. I can see them struggling early on. I think it's going to be a lot better for them come summer split, again, once they've had that time. But as it stands now, I have them at 6 in the power rankings.
Yeah, I've got Liquid here at 6. Again, FlyQuest and Liquid are the two teams that I have really no idea how they're going to finish. As I'm looking at this, I'm starting to talk myself out of it. I think Summit's going to be great. I'm going to be targeting him fantasy-wise for sure. Piosic, I think what happened was Piosic has been added since I did these power rankings. We'll see. I'm still not totally... I mean, he's going to be great, but I'm not sold that he's going to be world champion great, just because it was kind of seemed like a little bit of a flash in the pan, the Worlds run, as amazing as it was. I do think he got some undue criticism for some of those missed smites, that almost seemed to cost them the series, but I think he'll be good. I'm just not totally sold. And then Harry and Yeon, they're totally unproven. A lot of people are really excited about them, but we'll see. I'm hoping that they'll, with this roster, I'd expect them to play a little bit more through top lane, especially Core JJ has always worked better kind of roaming around the map and making plays. If he can get Summit ahead, we've seen what Summit can do with the lead. He can just take over a game. So I'm hoping that's how Liquid will play. I've got him 6 for now. Who you got here at 5?
Yeah, so 5, just for the sake of time, I have actually Liquid, basically for all of the reasons that you already mentioned. I don't want to take, again, too much time here, but I think with the Korean-speaking team that they're looking to build, they clearly have a path forward, right, as to exactly what they want to do. So I have them in that tier with Fly, in that they could probably crack the top 3, I think, for sure, if everything comes together sooner than later. But again, at the same time, and same thing with Fly, I think they are going to need to take that extra time, especially bringing in the imports, to find that cohesion amongst the team and really see what the team is made out of. Who do you have at 5?
Yeah, I've got FlyQuest. We've talked about it. Obviously, I'm surprised we had those two the same, but I just expect them to take a little bit more time to really gel, just because they're kind of coming from all different places. A couple from the LCK, a couple from Academy, a couple, Impact and Spica, who are veterans. I think they're going to take a while to gel. I think they'll be better in the summer split than the spring. That's why I've got them at 5. I got to imagine 4 probably matches for us. I could be wrong. I've got CLG. CLG is who I'm going to be rooting for. I think I might be ranking them here at their peak. I'm not sure if they've got a real great chance to win the split, but I just love that they're running back the same squad. Remember, this is a squad that finished last place in the spring. The only change was Dokla in the top lane, and they came out in the summer and they just dominated. So fun to watch. I hope the meta allows them to be creative. That was part of what they were so good at in the summer. Who do you got for?
Yeah, so I also have CLG for all the reasons already mentioned. The only thing I would add on top of that is, as I mentioned, kind of with my own tier system here, I have them in their own tier, right below the final 3 teams that we'll get into. So I don't know if this is their peak. Could they maybe see themselves in the top 3 as we go through the spring split? Potentially, yeah, depending on how the teams are able to, get acquainted with one another. Obviously, they don't have that issue, if you want to call it that, to work through. So I can see them coming out probably one of the stronger teams, definitely from the start.
All right, and who do you got 3?
So for 3, I have 100 Thieves. I think kind of with Liquid and Fly, they will definitely need some time to get back to, or I should say, get the team to where they want to be. They're obviously bringing in some rookies. We have no idea what to make of Double Lift. The only thing that we know for sure is they obviously play with Bjerg. Bjerg is, as you already mentioned, very, very solid, never going to lose you a game. And then they also have, obviously Closer, who's been there, who is obviously a veteran at this point. So I think of the 3 teams in Fly, Liquid, and 100 Thieves, this team will take the least amount of time to get acquainted with one another, which is why I have them above teams like CLG and obviously above Liquid and Fly. So I see them right now as number 3. Could they potentially win the split? I think so as well. Could they end up not necessarily imploding, but falling out of the top 5 and out of favor, perhaps? I can see that as well. So who do you have for number 3?
Yeah, 3, I've got C9. C9, I think a little bit of uncertainty in the mid lane for me is why they have them there at 3. I just don't know enough about them. Diplex coming from the LFL. I'm just not sure that, that it is a step below the LCS. We'll see how he's able to adjust. That being said, I think this team probably has the most clear kind of vision of how they want to play. Like, they're going to feed Berserker. Part of what was so frustrating at Worlds is that they didn't do that. They went away from what won them the summer split championship. I hope that they kind of stick to that identity. And, I think C9 more than most teams may be kind of a slave to the meta. If the meta is good for them, they'll be great. And if not, then they won't be. I've got them at 3. I think there's, a ton of talent. Blabber, I think he should have been MVP. I don't remember spring or summer, but he's been a couple time MVP. And then I've got 100 Thieves at 2. I just have hope for the old guys. These are the guys that I grew up watching, honestly rooting against, but I think they're gonna be the fan favorites. I think a lot of it will lie. We talked about it already, but it does Double Lift still have it, and can Tenacity and Busio, kind of live up to the hype coming up from Academy? Who's 2 for you?
Yeah, for number 2, I have Evil Geniuses. I just think they kind of locked and loaded per se, just refueled with Someday and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name. Someday and FBI, excuse me. So yeah, I just think they just kind of refueled here. Their team, I believe, is arguably better than it ever has been. Obviously they were just running through the league before Danny, took his leave of absence. But I just think they probably the most solid team overall at this point. Again, at least on paper. So I think very, very close between them and my number 1 team. But right now I'm going to have to put them at number 2.
Yeah, and it's already known, but I have Evil Geniuses number 1. I think that they've reloaded. I think they're going to be just as good as they were, kind of at their peak in the summer split. But I think FBI and Danny kind of a side grade. I think Someday and Impact also kind of a side grade. And they were just so much better than everyone else at their peak. Obviously, towards the end, kind of fell off with all the stuff with Danny and whatnot. But I'm really excited for this team. Inspired coming off the MVP, Jojo Pion in his second year after a great rookie season. We'll see how it goes, but I've got Evil Geniuses pegged here for the Spring Split Championship.
Yeah, and then just to round things out here for my list, I have Cloud9. There's an old adage, to be the champ, you got to beat the champ, right? So they're clearly coming off one of their better splits in winning summer. Like you mentioned, they've already bring it back 4 out of the 5 players, with the mid kind of up in the air as to who that's going to be. I think they're going to be just okay. I should say, obviously average. I think they're going to be okay in that they're going to, pick up where they left off. Yeah, where they pick up from where they left off, minus Worlds, and we all know how that went. And I think they're going to be just fine. So I think they are the team to beat right now. Will they be at the end of the spring split or at the end of the year? I don't know that for sure, but I think they are, the team to beat as of right now.
All right, you've got C9. I've got Evil Geniuses. There will be a bet put on this. I don't know what it is.
I think I'm 2 beers down. So
yeah, I think you are, thanks to CLG.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, CLG. So there you have it, our early perceptions on the rosters, our early power rankings. I'm sure these will change as we get closer to the season. We had some stuff planned for fantasy content. I think we're going to save that for next week because we are already way over our allotted time. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening as always. But Biscuit, thank you so much for helping out. Your insight, your stats, always so helpful. Once again, check out the Twitter. It's at LFL Pod. Check out the Discord. You'll find that in the description of this episode or on Twitter. Always talking about roster updates, our favorite, what's going on. Everyone's looking for leagues. You can find it there. We've got a spot for people to put leagues together. Really looking forward to what we've got until the season starts. We'll be putting out episodes more often. Apologies a little bit for the audio quality as I am recording from a hotel room. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Pistons Wish and Biscuit signing off. Peace out.